Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. What I have here today is an orchid in critical condition and alarming, as it displays simultaneous symptoms of both rot and severe dehydration. This combination of issues is especially troubling, as it significantly decreases the plant's chances of survival unless immediate action is taken. The most immediate concern is the prominent yellowing and likely soft decay at the base of the lowest two leaves, which is a classic and often fatal sign of crown or stem rot spreading from the plant's core. This happens when moisture builds up in the center of the plant, and unfortunately, once this process begins, it tends to spread quickly if not addressed properly. Compounding this issue, all the leaves are limp, thin, and drastically drooping. The tissue itself feels soft and slightly wrinkled to the touch, a sign that the plant is struggling to retain water, but despite the obvious rot, the plant still seems unable to absorb moisture properly. This suggests that the root system has failed in its ability to provide hydration, even if water is available. If we take a closer look at the roots, we can see the full extent of the problem. Many of them are shriveled, gray, and desiccated, indicating they're no longer viable and have essentially stopped functioning as they should. These roots cannot draw up water, nutrients, or even oxygen to sustain the plant's basic life functions. In short, the plant is dehydrated on the inside and simply can't get the help it needs from its roots, which means that whatever's left of the orchid's energy is being drained by the rot and dehydration. To start, we're going to remove the orchid from its old pot. This is a critical step, as we need to inspect the roots closely and free them from any substrate that may be holding them back. Gently tip the pot over, making sure to support the orchid by the base of the plant. You don't want to damage the crown or the leaves during this process, so handle the plant with care. Once the pot is tipped, gently ease the orchid out. If it's stuck, don't force it. Gently tap the sides of the pot to loosen any compacted substrate. You can also give it a slight wiggle to loosen the roots from the sides of the container. Take your time here, as rushing this step could break or damage any still healthy roots. Now that the plant is out, we can begin the process of removing the old substrate. This step can be a bit messy, but it's important. We want to carefully peel away the old moss or bark from the roots, making sure not to tug too hard. Use your fingers or a soft tool to gently work through the substrate, trying to remove as much as possible without harming the delicate root system. If the substrate is heavily compacted, you can gently rinse the roots with lukewarm water to wash away the remaining debris. This will allow us to get a clear view of the roots and identify which ones are still viable. As you go along, take note of any roots that look healthy. These will typically be firm, white or greenish, and have a slightly plump appearance. On the other hand, any roots that are soft, mushy, brown, or gray should be removed, as they are signs of rot and will only harm the plant further. Once the old substrate is fully removed and we've rinsed the roots, we can begin the trimming process. At this stage, it's essential to be precise and careful. We don't want to remove any healthy roots, but we do need to cut away all the decayed and non-functioning ones. Grab a clean pair of scissors or garden shears, sterilized, of course, to avoid introducing any bacteria or pathogens to the plant. Make sure the cutting tool is sharp, as dull scissors can crush or damage the roots rather than making a clean cut. Start by examining each root carefully. Healthy roots are typically firm, white or light green, and may feel slightly plump to the touch. These are the roots that are still alive and able to absorb nutrients and moisture. You want to leave as many of these intact as possible. Next, focus on the roots that show signs of rot. These will typically be soft, mushy, or shriveled, often turning brown, black, or gray. These roots are no longer viable and need to be removed. For each decayed root, carefully cut as close to the base as possible without damaging any healthy tissue. After trimming the roots, it's time to give the plant a clean wash. We want to ensure there are no leftover debris, dirt, or remnants from the decayed roots that could harm the orchid further. To do this, take a soft water spray or a gentle stream of lukewarm water, not too hot or cold, as extreme temperatures can shock the roots. Begin by lightly spraying the entire root system. Make sure to focus on the areas where you just made cuts, washing away any bits of dead tissue or soil that may have been left behind during the trimming. Be gentle when spraying, as you don't want to damage the delicate roots or crown. A light misting will suffice, ensuring the plant is thoroughly cleaned but not oversaturated. This will also help remove any remaining dirt or pathogens that might have clung to the roots during the trimming process. Now, once you're done with the washing, we're going to take a razor blade or a sharp knife. It's essential that the tool is sterilized to prevent any infection from spreading. Clean the blade with rubbing alcohol or another disinfectant before proceeding. Carefully examine the top of the orchid to assess whether cutting it is necessary. If the crown of the plant, where the new leaves emerge, is damaged or the top portion shows signs of rot, it's best to remove this part to prevent further decay. You might also decide to cut off the top if the plant is too stressed or unhealthy to maintain the upper growth, as it will redirect its energy to growing healthy roots and possibly new shoots. Now, let's move on to preparing the solution that will help our orchid recover. Start by grabbing a clean container, something large enough to hold around 500 milliliters of water, and fill it with fresh, clean water. The water should be lukewarm, not too hot or cold, as extreme temperatures can stress the plant. Once the water is in the container, we're going to add a small teaspoon of conditioner essential oil. This oil is gentle, soothing, and will help condition the orchid's root system, keeping the plant's natural oils balanced. Essential oils can act as natural antimicrobial agents, helping prevent any further fungal or bacterial infections. Now that the solution is ready, it's time to prepare the basin. Choose a container large enough to hold the orchid comfortably, ensuring that the plant can sit fully submerged without being crowded. The basin should have enough room for the roots to spread out a bit and for the solution to cover the base of the plant without overflowing. Place the orchid in the basin, making sure it fits perfectly. You don't want the plant to be crammed or tilted, as this could cause stress. Once the orchid is positioned correctly, slowly pour the entire solution into the basin, covering the roots. Be gentle as you pour, making sure the solution reaches all the exposed roots and the base of the crown. While we wait for our orchid to soak, let's prepare our next solution, which will be an incredibly hydrating and nourishing treat for our plant. We're going to start with a fresh coconut. Coconut water is naturally packed with nutrients, enzymes, and electrolytes that can help give our orchid an extra boost during its recovery. First, grab a strong knife. Something like a machete works best for cracking open a coconut, as the outer shell is tough and fibrous. Carefully use the machete to cut away at the top of the coconut, making sure you're not putting too much force on the blade. Once you've cracked it open, Gently pour the coconut water into a clean container. Be sure to collect all the liquid that pours out. We'll need this for our solution. Coconut water is the key ingredient here because it's full of minerals, vitamins, and natural sugars that can help rejuvenate the plant's tissues, encourage new growth, and boost its immune system. The coconut water will also help hydrate the plant from the inside, supporting the root system as it recovers. Once you've collected the coconut water, take a small amount, about 20 milliliters, and pour it into a large container. We're not using a lot of the coconut water here, just enough to give our orchid that extra boost of nutrients. Now, fill the rest of the container with clean water, making sure the total volume is enough to immerse the orchid's roots during the soaking process. Stir the mixture well to ensure that the coconut water is fully dissolved into the water. This helps evenly distribute the nutrients and minerals throughout the solution. After 30 minutes, your orchid should be done with its oil solution bath, and it's time to move on to the next phase of recovery. Gently take the orchid out of the oil solution bath, making sure to let any excess liquid drain off. The orchid should feel hydrated, but not overly wet at this stage. Now, grab a small, clean tissue or cloth and dip it into the coconut solution we just prepared. You want to make sure the tissue is thoroughly soaked, but not dripping. Using gentle strokes, wipe the tissue over the surface of the orchid's leaves. Start at the base of the leaves and work your way towards the tips, being careful not to press too hard. This will help nourish the plant, while also giving it a boost of hydration and nutrients directly through the leaves. Once you've wiped down all the leaves, it's time to give the plant another soak, this time in the coconut solution. Place the orchid in an empty basin and pour all of the coconut solution over the roots, ensuring that the plant is fully immersed in the liquid. The goal here is to let the orchid soak for another 15 minutes, allowing the roots to absorb the full benefit of the coconut water. This soak will help replenish the orchid's energy, hydrate the roots, and promote faster healing. After letting the orchid sit in the coconut solution for 15 minutes, it's time to apply cinnamon powder to the trimmed parts of the plant. Cinnamon is not only a natural antifungal agent, but it also helps to seal the cuts, preventing infection and promoting healthy healing. It's a gentle but effective way to protect the orchid's vulnerable spots. To apply the cinnamon powder, grab a small, clean brush. A makeup brush or paintbrush works perfectly for this. Gently dip the brush into the cinnamon powder, making sure you don't overload it with too much. Then, carefully brush the cinnamon powder onto the freshly cut areas of the orchid, particularly around the crown and any other exposed tissue from the trimmed roots or top. Be gentle as you apply the cinnamon, as you don't want to press too hard or disturb the plant too much. The idea is to lightly dust the cinnamon over the cut surfaces, creating a protective barrier that helps seal the plant and prevent any harmful bacteria or fungi from infecting it. Now let's prepare a home for our orchid to grow. For this, we're going to use a large plastic water container. Start by cutting the top portion of the container off. You want to create an opening wide enough for the orchid to fit comfortably inside, while still allowing room for air circulation. Once you've removed the top, you'll notice that the bottom part of the container is clear and has a cap. This is important because it allows us to easily monitor water levels and drainage. Now, carefully punch small holes around the sides of the container, making sure they're evenly spaced. These holes will provide the orchid with necessary airflow and drainage, ensuring the roots don't stay too wet. The container acts like a mini greenhouse, trapping moisture and humidity, which is ideal for the orchid's recovery. Just place your orchid inside the container. Now, for the final part of getting the orchid settled into its new container, we're going to prepare the pot. Start by placing a small piece of tissue inside the drainage hole at the bottom of the container. This will act as a filter, preventing the pine bark from falling through the hole and blocking the drainage, while still allowing water to escape when it drains. It's a simple trick, but it helps keep everything neat and ensures good airflow. Next, we're going to add a layer of pine bark at the bottom of the pot. This will help with drainage and provide a nice, loose medium for the roots to grow into. Pine bark is an excellent choice for orchids because it promotes good air circulation, which is crucial for the health of the roots. Make sure the layer is about 1 or 2 inches deep, depending on the size of your pot. Once the bottom layer is in place, carefully adjust the orchid into the pot. You want to make sure it's centered and standing upright, with the roots comfortably positioned inside the container. Be gentle with the plant during this step so you don't disturb the roots too much. Now, fill in the rest of the pot with more pine bark, gently pressing it down to ensure it's packed loosely, not too tightly. This helps the orchid settle in without disturbing the roots or preventing water from draining properly. Make sure the bark surrounds the roots evenly, creating a nice cushion for them to grow into. Lastly, we're going to top off the pot with a layer of moss. Moss helps retain moisture around the roots while still allowing for good air circulation. It creates a perfect balance between hydration and drainage, especially for orchids like this one. Gently spread the moss across the top layer, making sure it's even but not too thick. This will help keep the roots protected and keep them from drying out too quickly. Now, from this point onward, routine care is absolutely crucial. Orchids thrive on consistency, and that's what will help this plant recover and grow strong again. Keep an eye on the moisture level. Make sure the moss stays slightly moist but not soggy. Water the plant when the pine bark starts to dry out, but be cautious not to overwater. Also, remember that light is key. Place the orchid in a spot with bright, indirect light, away from direct sunlight that could burn its delicate leaves. Regularly check for pests and gently clean the leaves with a damp cloth to keep them healthy. With consistent care, your orchid should gradually bounce back and thrive in its new environment. Patience is key. Keep a close eye on it, and in time, you'll start to see fresh growth and beautiful blooms. After 4 weeks of careful attention, we should start to see some remarkable changes in the orchid. At this point, the roots have had enough time to settle into their new medium, and the plant has had a chance to adjust to its new environment. The first thing you'll notice is that the orchid will have begun to stabilize. Any signs of dehydration or rot should be much less pronounced, and the plant should start showing signs of new growth. The leaves should now feel more firm and plump, no longer limp or drooping. They should also be greener as the plant has had time to regain some of its vitality. The orchid will also begin to look more alert. No more wilting or curling from dehydration. Instead, the leaves will start to stand tall and strong, signaling that the plant is on the mend. At this point, the roots should also be showing signs of new growth. They will likely start to look fresher with a brighter white or green color, and they might even start to stretch down toward the bottom of the pot as they seek out more nutrients and moisture. If you gently check the root system, you may feel some plumpness in the roots, which is a sign that they're absorbing water and nutrients properly. You might even notice new shoots or pseudobulbs starting to form, particularly if you've been consistently following a watering and care routine. These signs of new growth are a clear indication that the orchid is getting back on track and beginning to thrive again. And there you have it. With a bit of patience and the right care, your orchid will thrive again, showing you how resilient and beautiful these plants can truly be. It's amazing how a little love and attention can bring them back to life. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tips on orchid care and plant maintenance. Have any questions or your own tips to share? Drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences. Thanks for watching and happy gardening.